Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast, where we celebrate the incredible journeys of fathers who are making a difference. Hosted by Urban Light Ministry President and author, Pastor Eli Williams. Each week, we'll hear from an inspiring guest who will share their unique fatherhood story. We'll discuss the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way, offering valuable insights and encouragement for all dads. Join us as we explore the power of fatherhood and build a brighter future for our families.
Well, hello and welcome to another Fathering Strong podcast. I am Eli Williams, and with me today is my friend, glad to call him friend, Steve Killpack. Steve is the director of Community Endeavors Foundation in Cleveland, Ohio, the Healthy Fathering Collaborative, which is associated with that. He is a community organizer, a fatherhood advocate. He is a founding member of the Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families and serves as the administrator. That's a lot, and that's not all. So welcome, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Eli, and I'm glad to call you a friend as well.
Well, we're delighted to have you here, and we usually start, Steve, with the human side by asking you to tell us, first of all, your fatherhood story. Now, everybody has one. Some are good, some are bad, some are downright ugly. Whatever the case, there's something to be learned. And so we'll start there. Tell us about your childhood, your relationship with your biological father.
Yeah, thank you for starting there, Eli. I always think it's so important when we talk about fatherhood to go back to our own fathers and our relationships with them. My dad has passed away. He's 35 years ago. But I carry him in my heart every day and have conversations with him every day. He was born in the actually before the Depression started, but basically grew up in the Great Depression, and then went on to serve in World War II in the infantry in Europe as a sergeant and participated in the Battle of the Bulge. I bring that up because I know that he experienced a great deal of trauma there, but it was also a time that men did not speak of that trauma. Mm-hmm. And so those two experiences led him to be somebody that was just completely focused as an adult man and a father on financial security for his family and his career. And he closed off his feelings to a great extent. So he was a wonderful provider for our family. We had an intensely strong relationship, but he was not present for me emotionally, and I understood as I got older what that was about, but I missed it. And he also is an extremely competitive man, and he was certain that the path he had chosen in life was the one that I should follow. And he went on to be president of a bank in Cleveland and was kind of an industrial giant because he was so focused on financial security. And I wanted to be a social worker. And he was not at all happy with that. And we struggled quite a bit. He got his friends to kind of gang up on me. And so I actually ended up moving out to Seattle to get to a place where it was okay to be a male social worker and not worry about financial security. But I cherish him, and I'm sure we'll get to this later. But I'm really sad that he's missed the grandfather role. He would have loved that. And I'm really sad that my kids don't know him. My wife never met him.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that story. But you've got to explain what you mean when you say he had his friends gang up on you. They were trying to talk you out of your path and onto his.
Exactly. Yeah. Once I was brave enough to say, "Hey, you guys, this is what I want to do," boy, there was a lot of pressure about that it was the wrong choice. And we had. We struggled about that for a few years, and I got pretty direct with him at some point. Why won't you accept, what I want to do, Dad? And he basically broke down and he said, I always thought you'd want to be like me. And that was a powerful statement. And at that point, I understood that was his definition of love, that I would want to be like him.
Yeah.
Whereas he allowed me to be myself. And he didn't recognize that part of it.
Yeah. So many lessons there. I mean, to you dads who are listening, we want to be sure that we're not living through our children, wanting them to be who we want them to be, and not allowing them to be who they are wired to be. You know what I mean? That
absolutely. We don't want them to validate our past. And I feel lucky that I had that experience with my dad, because when I went on to have kids much later in life, the two things that I was focused most on was being there for them emotionally, to be present, and to help them get out into the world the way they want it to be, and support them in that. And it's been a good approach for me.
Yes. So again, dads, I think it's important to really think hard about that, and just be sure that you're not living through your children. Pushing your child to be good at basketball when he would or she would rather be a social worker, or just whatever it is. Train them up in the way that they should go. Not the way you want them to go, but based on who they are, their hopes and their dreams. Raise them up according to that, rather than our own hopes and dreams and wishes. All right, so Steve, you are involved in a lot. But before we get to that, I want to ask you about your becoming a father for the first time. What was that experience like?
Before I get to that, Eli, just to share really quickly, I kind of have two phases of fatherhood in my life. So when I did go out to start my social work career, I worked with at-risk youth, kids that had left their homes, were on the run, living on the streets, kids that weren't making it in schools. So that was a population that I worked with for 20 years or so. And I was essentially, as I look back on it, I was being a father to them. It was appropriate within the role of my being a social worker, but all of that fathering energy that I have within me went to them, and I loved it. It was a great phase of my life, and I could have gone on and done that forever. But I did meet a wonderful woman that I wanted to have children with, and so at the age of 43, I started my own family with her, and we have two absolutely wonderful kids, a 21-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. And I've been able to do exactly what I said with them, be completely present in their lives. I chose a career that I would shut it off for my time with them as a father, and whenever I needed to, and worked hard to get them out into the world in their own way.
So you had your first child at 43?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. What was that like?
Well, actually, I guess it was 44, and then I had my second child when I was 50. So it was great. It was absolutely great. And I think it was good for me. I knew who I wanted to be. I wasn't spending time on my own career and things I wanted to develop in my own life. I could completely focus on being a good dad, and being their father. So I loved it, whereas I saw other younger fathers still working their own stuff out, I didn't have to do that. So.
All right. Well, that's great.
Yep.
So at 43 or 44, you were fully grown by that time, had a lot of life experience. You were pretty settled as a man, as a human being. What was the dominant emotion when you discovered that you were going to be a father?
Oh, just absolute joy. Absolute joy. So excited, And I had come to terms that that might not happen for me, a few years earlier. So just the absolute joy that I knew it was going to. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Did you have any fears at all about being a parent?
I didn't, Eli, and I'm just lucky. I had worked with so many teen parents, young kids. I'd been around families and children and fathers so much so that I felt it was all new to be in my own life, but I didn't have fears until later when they started growing up and having their own struggles and anxieties during the pandemic, and definitely feared about them at that point. Just about their well-being.
Well, that's a whole nother interview to talk about the pandemic, parenting in a pandemic. So you didn't have any challenges. You had a perfect experience as am I getting that right? I'm kidding.
The challenges that we love, working so hard to get them to sleep, and helping them through weaning from breastfeeding, very, difficult, painful things to see kids go through that stuff. But the relationship was a joy for sure and continues to be.
Excellent. Yeah. So to close out that part of our conversation here, I'll ask you what advice you would give a young father who perhaps is going to be having a child a lot younger than 43 or 44. Let's say he's 25, just to pick a number. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give him in terms of preparing yourself as a man to be the best father you can be?
Well, I would. That's a great question, and it really feeds into a lot of the work that I've done in my life. Just to research fatherhood, find mentors that you look up to as fathers, even if it's not your own, and ask them for guidance so that you're fully prepared, because the health system really rejects us when we're new fathers. And I felt very lucky that I was a mature man and anticipated that and knew that I could ask, can I go into this, into this appointment with my wife? Can I be involved here? Because, otherwise I was going to be shunned and pushed out. So it's really important that dads understand that they belong in that child's life, even if they're not unmarried and don't have legal access, and that it's really important that they understand that they play a valuable role in the child's life, their health, and the health of the mother of their child, whether they're involved with them or not.
And that gets into the nature of some of the work that you do in fatherhood. So talk to us about that. What I know I listed off a number of titles that you have and things that you do, but what inspired you? Let's start there. What inspired you to begin working with fathers?
Well, it goes back actually, Eli, to my work on the street with kids that were no longer connected to their families. And I always believed in family of origin, and that it was important when we're working on understanding ourselves to think about our own family. So I would often ask those kids, what's your relationship like with your father? What's it like with your mother? And fathers came up so often when talking with kids that were struggling. And so I would say, well, would you like me to contact your dad? Would you like to talk to him? And inevitably they said absolutely. And so I would work so hard to get the contact information for that father, and I would call him up. And typically they hadn't been connected to that child for many years. These are kids that really had gone through a lot. And At first, the dads would be very defensive because typically they had been labeled as the problem in this child's life. You're the reason why your child's struggling. So I would explain very quickly, I'm not calling up to you up to blame you for anything. I just want to let you know that your child really wants to connect with you. And 9 times out of 10, Eli, those guys would just break down, crying. They were in so much pain. And wanted that relationship too. But then they would say, I didn't know how to manage that relationship. I wasn't invited into my child's situation. And I realized that, oh my gosh, we have systematically pushed so many fathers out of their kids' lives. And it just hit me that had to be the focus of my career then, is to create programs that engaged dads in their children's lives. And as I started to do that up here in Cleveland, there were, sadly enough, and I know you understand in this in your work, so many situations, there had been too much time had passed, and it was hard to get dads and kids reconnected. And after the birth of my daughter, I realized we got to start at pregnancy. We have to engage fathers with their children and their children's mom, whether they're married or not. Right at pregnancy, so that they don't drift away as so many do. So that's really been the passion of my work, is I call it paternal perinatal support for fathers. So we support them just as we do for moms from the moment that pregnancy test is positive.
Yeah, that's great work. So you organized it around community endeavors, which birthed Healthy Fathering Collaborative. How to tell us about that?
Yeah, so the Community Endeavors Foundation is a foundation that I was able to start with a couple other friends of mine. And to be honest with you, I used a great deal of my father's financial security that he'd left to me to start the foundation. So that's a very meaningful thing for me to do the best work I could in the community. In my father's name, even if he wasn't really happy about it. I did get to tell him before he died. That was my plan. Yeah. So we started working in Cleveland where there were no fatherhood programs at all. And that was my goal, is to create a complete system of network programs for fathers, following programs that were available from others in Cleveland. And so a lot of my work started in hospitals.
So about what year was that, Steve?
So I moved to Cleveland in 2001 with that dream. And then in 2003 or 4, we really started the work, what I called engaging expectant and new fathers. We established Boot Camp for New Dads programs, which is a childbirth education program for fathers in every hospital in the city. And then tried to, create father involvement through home visiting programs and schools and that whole what I call the lifespan of fatherhood. So that's been the goal. Sadly, I have to say, I'm near my retirement, and that goal is not going to be achieved. The maternal child health field is very firmly mother and child focused, but there is a growing awareness of the importance of engaging dads, I think.
So you have worked hard in the realm of advocacy for fathers, change in these systems to be more inclusive of fathers. What was the most challenging thing about that?
At first, initially, it was really challenging just to break the universal bias against fathers. The first question would be, why would you want to involve him? Especially when we're working, it was most extreme when I was trying to set up programs in correctional facilities for fathers, because it was so important that we help them re-engage with their kids when they got out of prison. And people were just like, "What? That's the last person that you would want in that child's life," So, addressing that head on and trying to teach people about the importance of fathers was really a challenge. But, allies came out of the network, out of the woodwork so quickly, and quite often it was older women, older mothers who had seen their own sons kind of pushed aside. Mm-hmm. And they knew the bias against dad. So, slowly I tried to gather all of those allies together. And that's really what was the Healthy Fathering Collaborative, which was just an effort to do community organization of people that were involved in organizations across the city to engage fathers in every system.
Yeah. Your work has been impactful. You wouldn't say that, but I know it, so I'll say it. Cleveland really plowed new ground in the fatherhood space, and even today, in my estimation, Cuyahoga County is on the leading edge of the fatherhood movement. So, I know your work had a lot to do with that. And along the way, the Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families developed. So what is your connection with that organization, both at the beginning and now?
Well, I'll start quickly with Cleveland. I had a really wonderful partner here, a man named Peter Lawson-Jones,
who we had on our program
exactly
a couple months ago.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. So Peter, in the late 90s, when he was in the Ohio General Assembly, he understood the need for programs for fathers, and so he started the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood, and which was formed in 1998 and then written out of the budget in the year 2000. So when I came to Ohio in 2001, I thought I was going to be working with the commission, but it had lost its funding. So we'll put that a note on that, and we'll get back to it. So Peter moved to Cleveland just as I was getting this work going up here, and he was a county commissioner. And I knew that he was so upset that the Commission on Fatherhood at the state level had worked out. And so as I got all of these the community organized to support fatherhood, I went to Peter and I said, Peter, you could do here what you wanted to do in the state. Let's create a Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative. And so he did the whole governmental piece for that. He got $1 million in the county budget carved out. I had the community set up to support him when he's launched that legislation and that initiative. And then he appointed somebody within county government, and that Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative has flourished still today. Yes. So that was a great feeling to go through that whole advocacy process here. And then right around that same time, I started, attending fatherhood conferences around the country, and I would meet various, folks from around Ohio that were doing similar things that I was in their communities. And those are our friends now, Eli, on the OPNF board. We decided we needed to establish a statewide network of fatherhood practitioners, really with the goal in mind at that point was to re-energize the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. And we realized that wasn't going to happen until there was an outcry from the public that we needed the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. So that's why we formed OPNFF. And you joined us soon thereafter.
Well, it's tremendous work. My guest today is Steve Killpack, and we're going to continue our conversation with him after this brief timeout.
Looking to be the best dad you can be? The Fathering Strong podcast is your guide. Hosted by Pastor Eli Williams, each episode features inspiring conversations with dads who are making a difference. Learn valuable strategies for building strong families, tackle tough fatherhood issues, and get motivated to be your best self. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Your subscription helps us provide free services and resources to families in need. Don't wait. Subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast today and join our community of dads committed to building strong families. Together, let's make a difference.
Welcome back, friends. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. Eli Williams here, and my guest is Steve Killpack. Steve is a trailblazer, and even today is doing some very consequential work in the area of fatherhood. And he is one of those special individuals who's a part of the reason why the state of Ohio is a leader in fatherhood. So I want to, Steve, talk about the importance of collaboration. Now, this podcast could be watched by people anywhere in the world, actually. But let's talk about your experience and in Ohio and in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County. What has been the role of collaborating individuals and organizations in the work that you have been engaged in?
That's a wonderful question, Eli. And that work collaboration is really, the keystone to everything that I've done in my work. Essentially, I was trying to create a network of programs to support fathers because there isn't a federal funding source to support fathers like there is for mothers of newborn children and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So we had to basically I looked to every agency that I knew needed to be part of a network that supported fathers. I looked for the most father friendly person in that agency and tried to develop a relationship with them, and then said, okay, let's collaborate now. We need to find some connections in the hospital systems. Let's look around to who we can collaborate in the different hospital systems. Okay, then it's now kids are going to daycare and early Head Start. Who can we find in Head Start? Who can we find in the schools? And so it was relationships with people in important agencies that really created, that kind of community-wide collaboration. Now we could say the Healthy Fathering Collaborative has created it was like a virtual agency that did what a real, well-funded agency could do.
So how is it structured? Is there a chairperson? Are there committees?
It's all in the way I work. It's all grassroots organizing. It's just convening people that have a shared mission and talking. And we did that for 20 years. We had quarterly meetings in the Cleveland area, right up, we basically ended at the pandemic. It was just kind of the natural time to do that. And we met as a group to develop programs that we could then create together because there wasn't still enough funding to do everything that we needed to do. So it had to be a network of agencies that when a father would surface that needed some help, that we knew we had somebody at that agency that could help him. And I've never been a believer in hierarchies. I've been a believer that in social work, if you're going to work to support another person, it needs to be an even relationship, not one that comes out of hierarchy. So a non-hierarchical relationship, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. So someone who's just beginning in fatherhood, let's say their community does not have a fatherhood program, but someone understands the importance of targeting fathers to work with them to help them to be the best they can be, so that their children, whether they're married to the mother or not, can have the best growing up experience that they can have. So what advice would you give someone who's wanting to start something in their community?
Well, hopefully they have a passion for what service they want to provide fathers. Maybe they're aware that so many, a low-income unmarried father has no access to his children legally in Ohio. So maybe they have some experience, or they know somebody who has managed to gain custody and parenting time, and they set up a way to support fathers in representing themselves through the court process. Or maybe they were so moved by the childbirth experience, they want to be a coach of a boot camp for new dad programs. But they have to start with something that they believe in. That's part of a father's path. And then go to where they can find fathers, whether it's in a barbershop or in a sports game or in a church or, I've known friends who were trying to do this, say, at a child care center. And they wanted to create a group for dads at that Head Start Center. And of course, the dads weren't coming in because they weren't invited, but they were all out in the parking lot. So they went out into the parking lot and engaged the dads there. Once you think about it, how can I meet dads where they are and not where I want them to be? Mm-hmm. It's pretty easy to find them. And once they know that they're respected and supported, they'll follow.
Yeah, and you'd probably say, talk to dads in other communities who are involved, who've got some things going in their communities. They can find them through OPNFF.
Yep,
right?
Exactly. Yes, and now we do have a statewide network, so that if somebody in a town where there's not much going on with fatherhood reaches out to us, we can offer a lot of support, curriculum training, ideas for the most important people to connect with in the community, whether it's the child support agency or a local school or, to hospitals, those kind of things. So we can help folks with those kind of things now.
Right. Particularly if you're in Ohio, you can go to the website. I believe it's opnff.net. Is that not right?
It is, but easier to remember is ohiofathers.org. That one works as well. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Excellent. And even if you're not from Ohio and you just want to learn, you're welcome also to reach out. So let's talk about your future goals. Now, I heard you mention that you're nearing retirement. Now, why in the world you'd be nearing retirement at your young age? I don't know.
When my son was born, I said, I guess it was I was 52, to be honest with you, when my son was born. I thought, when he graduates from high school, that'll be a good time for me to retire. So he's 2 years away from that now. But that's an interesting thing, if I have to get philosophical about that now, Eli, because I'm an idealistic man, and I really thought that things would be much farther along in the development of the fatherhood field when I started than they are. I actually had a vision that we wouldn't be speaking of programs for fathers and mothers by the time I retired. I thought we would be talking about programs for families, and everybody would understand that that included fathers, and all programs would include fathers, but they don't. There's been too much inertia preventing that. So, and now, we're in a situation where I'm going to be retiring in a very conservative time. And there's not as much emphasis on programs for families, especially low-income families. So I've realized, I'm not going to achieve some of those things, but I still have my voice. So I'm working really hard to think about ways to creatively use my voice and promote what I believe in the last couple of years of my career, rather than actually knowing that I'll accomplish some of those things that I hoped would be accomplished.
Now, I really can't let that pass, because to me, there's a disconnect. Someone who is truly conservative in the traditional sense should want father engagement. I mean, we hear conservatives talk about it all the time.
No.
How what a shame it is that fathers are not involved with their families, and the father absence crisis. We hear it talked about a lot. So to me, it doesn't make sense. It would make more sense to me if those in the conservative movement were 100% behind programs for fathers, because they know the importance of fathers in the lives of children. What do you think is causing that disconnect?
I couldn't agree more, and I continue to be confused by it, right? I think that conservatives want government out of family lives, right?
Right.
So
what better way?
Wouldn't they want to help families be self-sufficient?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
but it seems like they're so focused on when they look at low-income families, and in a way, the place that they think government is spending too much money is supporting low-income families. So why isn't that father being a better provider? That's where they get stuck, I think.
Yeah.
Where instead of saying, why aren't we helping that father being the best father,
Yes.
provider, nurturer, carer that he can be?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Well, that's my message, but it's not being shouted loud enough.
No.
So
no,
any suggestions
no.
you've got would be
Well, and
welcome.
it's and it's not all conservatives.
No, of course not.
Governor Kasich, he really got it. We did wonderful things during the Kasich administration, and Governor DeWine, who I admire, he's a good man, but he defines families as mother and children. Still, unfortunately, everything he did. And I noticed that as soon as he came into office, and I worked so hard because I do believe in advocacy to get to that, but it's not happening. But we can keep talking about it, Eli, and we will.
We absolutely have to.
We will.
If things are going to change.
Yep.
Particularly now that the whole country has shifted even more conservative, we've got to somehow help them connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
That fatherhood is the key to many of the changes they want to see.
Yep.
For children in our society.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
We're going to take our last time out, Steve, and when we come back, I want to get your personal reflections, and then we'll wrap things up, making sure that we tell people again how to reach you if they've got questions about your work or OPNFF or any of those things. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. My guest is Steve Killpack, and we'll be back with him after this.
Children benefit significantly from the presence of committed, loving, nurturing fathers. Strong fathers contribute to stable families and safe, healthy communities. Fathering Strong connects, engages, and empowers fathers. Join the fatherhood movement at fatheringstrong.com to discover a wealth of resources. From inspiring videos to informative articles and instructive courses. By subscribing to our resources, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping Fathering Strong provide these valuable tools to families in need. Visit fatheringstrong.com, download the app, and subscribe to our YouTube channel today. Together, let's build stronger families and communities.
Welcome back. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams, and my guest is Steve Killpack, my very good friend and someone who inspires me to keep on going, even though I keep getting hints that he's going to be slowing down to a stop here soon. Let's squeeze every bit of wisdom we can out of him. All right, let's do that, Steve.
You told me you were going to retire a couple of years ago, Eli, and you didn't. So you're inspiring me as well.
I retired from my broadcasting career after 40 years. And I knew that eventually that would, lead to podcasting and things in the digital world.
Awesome.
And finally it did. So I haven't quit altogether, Steve Killpack.
You certainly haven't. You're doing great work, Eli. Yep.
And you have got so much to share. I would hope that we can at least keep you around in an advisory capacity, because there's so much work to do. I know you'll agree with that.
Yep.
So personally, and maybe you've said it already, but it's worth repeating. Who has inspired you, perhaps even continues to inspire you on a personal level, and or on a professional level? Where do you draw some inspiration? Is there another human being that?
Well, it's a group of human beings, okay. Eli, and it's our board. It's our OPNFF board, which we formed in 2003. And just about everybody that was a founding member is still there. And I consider you all my brothers. We have a shared mission. We have a a love for each other first, and we support each other as individuals first, and then we do the work that we can when we have the time and money to do that. But I'm not sure I could have continued because with the strength that I have without that group behind us. And you could do a podcast with the whole board sometime. Maybe that would be wild and fun.
That would be. But I don't think we could keep it to 35 or 40 minutes.
Yeah, and I also have two very dear friends who started that Community Endeavors Foundation with me, and they too both had fathers who were very successful, and they wanted to do something meaningful with some of the money that they'd inherited, and so those guys are dear to me. They've let me do the work that I believe in and supported me all the way. Yep.
Oh, that's tremendous.
Yep.
So what would be the final message that you would want to share with our audience here, the Fathering Strong audience? What would you like to leave them with?
Where I just am still stuck, Eli, that we need to support young fathers starting during the pregnancy and all the way through their child, through the birth and early childhood of their children, because I see so many parents separate at that point, and then the father doesn't know how to get back in, and the community needs to recognize that that's a very difficult thing, because the systems aren't there to support fathers, and they need to be celebrated. We still haven't figured out a way to celebrate paternity. We celebrate new pregnancies for moms, but we haven't celebrated paternity. We haven't celebrated the father-child relationship at birth the way we do mothers. They're just to the side, and we need to really engage them and bring them into the family, and let them know that their mother and of their child and their children are really will be so much better off if they're involved. That's the voice that I can't stop with. And I have to say that I'm very jealous of England. My wife is from England, so I track what's going on over there a lot. And they have, of course, national health care. They have a national health system, and they are doing exactly what I just described. They're doing comprehensive healthcare services now for fathers, starting at the point of a pregnancy, making sure his own health is good, making sure he's got the education that he needs for himself and for his family. And I have that vision that someday that's got to happen for us here.
Yeah, that's so wise to go way upstream like that, because it will help to bring down some of the other social absolutely. Determinants, that result in so many of the social and financial issues we have now with families.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, you asked about inspiration. The research that inspired me was done in 2001. It's called the Child Well-Being Study. And it was 100,000 low-income, unmarried couples across the country at the time of the birth of their child. And the biggest finding was that at the time of the birth, over 85% of those couples were committed to parenting together, whether they were in a relationship or not. They were committed to supporting each other's relationships with their children, and it was called a magic moment for fathers to connect with their child and with their mother, the mother of their child. And that research still inspires me, because our systems haven't caught up with that, because the majority of those situations break apart too quickly when the father isn't supported, when he doesn't feel like he's got enough money to contribute to the family. There's so many other ways that we can value his contributions.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Now I need to go back and review that again. So how would someone contact you if they want more information about your work? Is there an email address you'd like to share?
My email address that I use for work is neofathering. So like think of Northeast Ohio fathering at gmail.com. My website that I created for the Healthy Fathering Collaborative is the same thing. It's neofathering.net. So I can easily be reached through those two electronic things, and then they can reach us on ohiofathers.org. I'm the guy that the emails come to if you email that group. So,
well, thank you, my friend. Well. It has been a delight to have you as our guest on the Fathering Strong podcast. It won't be the last time. Just thought I'd warn you about that. And we thank all of you for tuning in today. We hope you will subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast on YouTube. That way you'll get notifications when a new episode has been released, which is weekly. And you'll stay up to date on everything that's happening with the Fathering Strong movement. So it's free. Just go to YouTube and subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast. And you will help us in that way to spread the message about the good work that is going on, not just through Fathering Strong, but throughout the state of Ohio and in the country. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Steve Killpack, for being our guest. Join us again on the next installment of the Fathering Strong podcast.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Fathering Strong podcast. We hope you found the conversation inspiring and helpful. To make sure you don't miss out on future episodes, subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Just search for Fathering Strong in your favorite app. The Fathering Strong podcast is brought to you by Urban Light Ministries, a nonprofit organization with a 3-decade legacy dedicated to turning the hearts of fathers to their children. Thanks to your support, we're able to keep this podcast and many other resources free for dads everywhere. To learn more about Urban Light Ministries or to donate and help us continue this important work, visit urbanlight.org. The Fathering Strong podcast is a production of Urban Light Ministries. Eli Williams is your host, and Bruce Stapleton of the Movementum Group is the producer and engineer. Our theme music is provided by saxophonist Harold Rayford.